I was once homeless, lost, and felt I had nothing to lose. But today I'm here to share the journey that led me from having nothing to finding true purpose and inner freedom. If you're ready to change your life and discover your inner strength, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Each week I'll share Stoic lessons, stories, and tools to help you overcome challenges and reach your goals. Join me on this journey. I was born into chaos. Loss, confusion, and brokenness filled the walls of my childhood home. There were days when the air felt too heavy to breathe, and nights when silence screamed louder than any voice. But here's the truth. We don't get to choose where we begin. We only get to choose how we rise. When I first stumbled across the teachings of Epictetus, something inside me shifted. You cannot control the circumstances of your birth, he taught, but you can always control your response to fate. Those words became a fire in my chest. They burned away the bitterness. They lit a path through the darkness. I realized I wasn't a prisoner of my past. I wasn't doomed to replay the chaos that shaped me. I could stand up. I could decide who I would become, no matter how deep the scars ran. Every setback became a lesson. Every wound became a mark of survival, not defeat. I learned to own my story, to carry it not as a burden, but as a badge. Today, I don't run from where I came from. I honor it, because it taught me the most powerful truth of all. My beginning was never my ending. It was only the first chapter. I grew up under the sharp eye of my grandparents. Their love came wrapped in discipline, unwavering, relentless, and sometimes unbearably strict. While other children ran free, I learned to stand tall, to follow rules, to understand the cost of every choice. And for a long time I believed this was enough. If I could obey, if I could endure, maybe I would be free. But life had a harder lesson waiting. True freedom doesn't come from following someone else's rules. It comes from mastering yourself. Seneca once wrote, "External discipline is only the beginning. True freedom lies in internal discipline." Those words cracked open something inside me. I realized I had spent years waiting for someone else's approval, measuring my worth by someone else's standards. That's not freedom. Freedom is waking up and choosing your path, not because you must, but because you believe in it. Freedom is saying yes when it's hard, no when it's lonely, and standing firm when the world shakes around you. My grandparents taught me strength, but life taught me sovereignty. And now, every day I build the kind of discipline that no one can take away. The kind that turns dreams into reality, and ordinary days into a life well lived. I lost myself early. Before I even knew who I was, I had already fallen. Drugs offered an escape, a quiet place where the pain blurred and the world forgot me. But it was a lie. Every high pulled me deeper into a life that wasn't mine. And then came the reckoning. No one had done this to me. No one had forced my hand. I had abandoned myself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No one can lead you astray but yourself. Guard your mind like a fortress." For the first time I understood. The real battle was never out there. It was inside me, from the very beginning. My mind was not a prison unless I allowed it to be. My life was not doomed unless I surrendered it. The walls I needed to build weren't made of stone, but of discipline, vigilance, and self-respect. Piece by piece I rebuilt the fortress within. I learned to stand watch over my thoughts, my habits, my choices. Not with fear, but with fierce love for the person I was becoming. Today I don't run from my past. I don't hide my scars. They are proof that I once fell, and chose to rise stronger than I ever believed possible. The night I was thrown out, the world felt colder than I had ever known. One moment I had a place to call home. The next I was nothing but a name with no address. Concrete became my bed. The stars my only roof. But here's what no one tells you. Losing everything doesn't mean losing yourself. At my lowest, when I had no possessions left to cling to, I found the words of Epictetus. It is not the loss of possessions that makes us poor. It is the loss of steadfastness of spirit. Those words pierced through the silence of my nights. They reminded me that true wealth was never about what I owned. It was about what I carried inside. Courage. Hope. A will that refused to be broken. Every day on the streets tested me. Every sunrise was a question. Would I let this define me, or refine me? I chose the second. I chose to build from the inside out. To let resilience be my currency and hope my shelter. Today when I look back I don't see failure. I see the beginning of an unshakable spirit. A spirit that knows. True poverty is not the absence of things. It's the surrender of the soul. And I will never surrender. Survival isn't noble when you're fighting with empty hands and a desperate heart. I made choices I'm not proud of. I crossed lines I once swore I never would. In the hunger, in the fear, in the nights colder than regret itself. I convinced myself I had no other option. but survival has a cost. And sometimes the price is your own reflection staring back at you, asking, "Who have you become?" Seneca once said, "No circumstance can force us to lose our dignity. Every choice is ours alone." Those words hit me harder than any punishment ever could. I realized survival wasn't the enemy. My surrender was. I had traded my values for a few stolen moments of safety. And in doing so, I had nearly lost the one thing no one could take from me, my self-respect. From that moment on, I chose differently. Even when it hurt. Even when it cost more than I thought I could bear. Because dignity isn't something the world can hand you. It's something you forge inside, blow by blow, through every decision you refuse to compromise. Today I carry my past not as shame, but as a reminder. Survival built my body. Honor built my soul. I saw it happen. The kind of wrong that freezes the air and makes your heart pound in your ears. Everyone else turned away. Some out of fear. Some out of habit. Most because it was easier to pretend it wasn't their problem. But deep inside, a voice roared louder than my fear. "If not you, then who?" Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not the majority that defines right and wrong. It is your own upright soul." Those words lit a fire in my chest. Right and wrong were not decided by crowds. Not by silence. Not by the weight of looking the other way. They were decided within me, by the part of me that still believed in courage, in justice, in standing tall when everything else begged me to kneel. So I stood up. Not because I was the strongest. Not because I wasn't afraid. But because I knew fear was no excuse for abandoning what was right. Every time we choose integrity over comfort, we draw a line in the sand. A line that defines who we are. I learned that day that the cost of courage is real. But so is the reward. A soul that can look itself in the mirror and say, "I did not stay silent." There are wounds so deep they don't just scar your body. They break something inside you. I was bleeding, broken, and running out of places to hide. In a moment of desperation, I walked myself into prison. Not because I loved the walls. But because for the first time in a long time, I needed walls to stop me from destroying myself. It looked like the end. It felt like defeat. But sometimes the fall is where the real climb begins. Seneca once said, "External failure can often be the beginning of internal victory." Those words echoed through the cold, empty nights of my confinement. On the outside I had lost everything. Freedom. Pride. The life I thought I wanted. But inside something else stirred. A will to fight for the man I could still become. A hunger not just to survive, but to transform. Every day behind bars became a battlefield within myself. Every hard choice, every moment of brutal honesty, hammered a new foundation under my feet. Today I look back and see it clearly. The prison wasn't the end of my story. It was the forge where I reclaimed my life. Sometimes it takes losing everything to finally find the power you carried all along. There's a silence that only the deepest nights know. A silence where there's nowhere left to hide. Not from the past. Not from the pain. Not from yourself. I faced it alone. No noise to drown it out. No excuses left to cover the truth. And that's when the real battle began. Not against the world, but against the lies I had told myself for far too long. Epictetus said, "True freedom begins when we dare to face ourselves, without excuses, without running away." Those words became my anchor when everything else slipped away. It's easy to pretend in the daylight, when the world is busy and distractions are plenty. It's much harder at 2 a.m. when it's just you and your reflection. Stripped of every mask, every defense. But that's where I found the truth. And with it, the beginning of real freedom. Freedom isn't about escape. It's not about running faster or shouting louder. It's about standing still, looking yourself in the eye, and choosing to own it all. The good, the broken, the yet to be redeemed. Those nights didn't break me. They rebuilt me. Because the person who learns to face their own soul can face anything. No one came to save me. No mentor. No miracle. No hand reaching down from the sky. For a long time I waited for someone to show me the way. Waited for life to feel easier. Waited for the world to hand me a map out of my struggles. But nothing changes when you wait. Nothing grows without your own hands tending it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not wait for someone else to save you. Knowledge and virtue are wings you must forge yourself." Those words struck like lightning. If I wanted to rise, I had to build my own wings. Piece by piece. Book by book. Habit by habit. I taught myself to think differently. I trained my mind like a soldier trains for battle. Sharpening my focus, strengthening my resilience, refusing to surrender to ignorance or despair. Every hour spent learning, every moment spent wrestling with my own limitations, became a brick in the foundation of a life I was no longer waiting for, but actively creating. Today I don't hope for rescue. I don't pray for shortcuts. I build, every day, with knowledge in one hand and character in the other. Because salvation was never coming from outside. It was always mine to claim. Years had passed, but the space between us felt like an eternity. I had built walls, guarded my heart, convinced myself that I was better off without them. The pain of betrayal, of distance, of words left unspoken, had carved deep scars. But sometimes healing comes not from time but from a choice. The choice to forgive. Seneca once said, "Forgiveness is not just a gift to others, but a liberation for ourselves." And I realized holding on to that anger, that hurt, that resentment, it wasn't keeping them away. It was holding me hostage. When I reached out, when I allowed myself to release the grip of the past, I wasn't just reconnecting with them. I was reconnecting with myself. Forgiveness didn't erase the pain, but it opened a door to peace I had long since closed. It allowed me to see them, not through the lens of what they had taken from me, but through the eyes of someone who had learned to see their flaws as part of the journey, not the destination. And when I finally embraced them again, I didn't just find my family. I found my freedom. The freedom that only forgiveness can bring, the kind that heals not just others but the soul. I didn't believe in myself. Not then. Not when the weight of my doubts was heavier than any achievement I had ever earned. I looked in the mirror and saw a person I didn't recognize, a person who wasn't sure they could make it. But then, someone believed in me. Someone saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. They trusted me when I didn't trust my own steps, my own heart, my own worth. Marcus Aurelius said, "Treat the trust others place in you as a sacred duty, not to be betrayed." That line hit me like a thunderclap. This person, this faith they had in me wasn't just a gift, it was a responsibility. I couldn't let it slip through my fingers. I didn't know how to believe in myself. But I knew I had to honor their belief in me. So I took one step at a time, carrying their trust like a lantern in the dark. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I almost turned back. But I couldn't betray the faith they placed in me. Slowly I began to believe. Because sometimes, it's the trust of others that helps us find our own. And in that trust, I found the strength I didn't know I had. The doors to the lecture hall felt like the gates of a new world. A world that had always felt out of reach, like something I could never claim. I was walking in not with confidence, but with the weight of every failure, every doubt, every mistake I had ever made. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel ready. But sometimes you don't wait for the perfect moment. You fight for it. Epictetus once said, "All external glory is empty without victory over oneself." And that's when I understood. This wasn't just about acing exams or earning degrees. This was about overcoming the person who doubted, who feared, who had been broken by life's challenges. This was about fighting for a version of myself that could face this future without hesitation. Every lecture felt like a battle. Every page turned was a small victory over my own insecurities. Every late night, every struggle to grasp concepts. They weren't just obstacles. They were the tools I needed to reshape myself. And slowly I began to win. Not just over my coursework but over the doubts that once defined me. Because the real glory wasn't in the grades. It was in the strength I found within myself to keep going. The future I thought I had lost. I was taking it back one lesson at a time. For years I ran from my past. The memories were too heavy, too painful, too full of mistakes I couldn't erase. I told myself I was moving forward, but every step felt like I was running from something I couldn't outrun. But healing doesn't come from running. It comes from facing what you've left behind. Seneca said, "No one is lost forever. Each person can turn their suffering into light for others." Those words were a revelation. The past I had buried didn't need to define me, it could shape me into something better. So I went back. I embraced the parts of me I had tried to forget, the hurt, the failures, the choices I regretted. I learned to see them not as chains, but as lessons that had guided me to where I stood now. And as I reclaimed my roots, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just healing for myself. I was becoming a beacon for others still lost in the dark. Each scar I carried, each mistake I had made, became a story that could guide someone else. I had once been lost, but now I was a light for those searching for their way. Because sometimes, the greatest purpose we find is in helping others find their own.